Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to a new month, and a new month means a new Learn with Flow topic series. I'm really liking organizing this in terms of some series. That way we really get to spend a few weeks really digging into the nuances of a particular topic versus I think there's a lot of short bite, sound bite messages out there these days on social media, like 3 main hacks you need to know to master your metabolism. And I just enjoy a lot more of the dialogue, the questions, the answers, the nuances, because guess what? It doesn't work that quite as simple as we like to think about. We can just digest all of our health and wellness concepts from little tidbits on Instagram and social media. It really doesn't work that way. So I like to be able to really have a platform that we can really dig into the nuances. Let's ask questions. Let's talk about how this might be different for different individuals, because everybody that comes into my practice tends to be very unique in their treatment strategies and in their overall symptoms and where we go from there. So when we think about all of the different series that we're diving into with Learn with Flow, we've gotten a chance to talk about things like women's health. We've gotten a chance to talk about gut health. We really dove into an autoimmunity series, and based off of that autoimmunity series, I really got a lot of questions and inspiration around continuing to dig further into even our own proactive symptom recognition and symptom management as patients. So I wanted to be able to really dig in and see what are some of the most common symptoms that individuals are coming to seek help with in my practice, and how can I extend some of those conversations to more individuals, especially when we got to talking about autoimmunity, and we were really identifying that there's kind of 3 main phases or stages of autoimmunity, and really the first 1 or 2 phases or stages might go relatively unrecognized, because some of the signs and symptoms that start that whole process are things that we tend to push off, or we just are told that they're normal symptoms. We get the symptoms dismissed by a traditional medicine practitioner, or we're told oh, that's just a normal part of aging, or normal part of being a parent, or it's caused by stress, right? And we're just kind of led to believe that there isn't really anything proactive that we should be doing about it. And so then we maybe cope with that in different ways, and we kind of just push it off, brush it off, and these symptoms really build and become more and more and more because we never really identified or got to the root cause of said symptoms. So I'm going to call June our symptom series month. I want to hear from you guys around even different symptoms that you want to kind of hear a little bit more about. Maybe you're getting mixed messages about where that symptom might be coming from, whether it's digestive symptoms, menstrual cycle symptoms, changes in libido, or hair, skin, nails. There's so many different directions that we're going to be able to go to really kind of call out or name certain symptoms. And then I'm going to dive in and really talk about where do they come from? What might they be contributed to? Because chances are it's not just like a one-stop shop. There may be multiple different reasons that each individual might elicit a particular symptom. But I want to give it a little bit more of a functional medicine lens, because a lot of times from a traditional medicine standpoint, as a lot of people are figuring out, they're not necessarily getting the right labs, they're not really getting the right interpretation, or they just feel like they're not being heard in that, and getting a little bit of a dismissive structure around maybe some of these early warning signs that we actually could be doing something about. So today I really want to dig into the first symptom of our series here, and we may extend this even farther if it's a hit with you guys. But the number 1 symptom I probably see in my practice more often than not on initial intake forms and in client conversations is around energy. Number 1, a lot of people are feeling fatigued, and not just a normal amount of fatigue, but they can notice that there's a shift, or they notice that there's a change in how they either used to feel or how they've kind of navigated energy levels in the past. So I think energy can show up a bunch of different ways. It can show up as first thing in the morning energy, where it's very noticeable that I have individuals where when I'm talking to them further, right? It's like when someone tells me they're fatigued, it's not just stopping there. It's like, tell me more about that. When do you experience the fatigue? How do you experience the fatigue? How do you normally deal with or kind of cope with the fatigue? How do you improve it, right? So there's lots of additional dialogue that really comes into play, because that gives me all the data that I need as a practitioner to really guide them down the right approach. So when someone says fatigue, it's like, is that happening in the morning? Are you that person that can't peel yourself out of bed? No matter how long you sleep, you still feel like you wake up tired. You feel like the first thing that you reach for and you need is like a cup of coffee or like a shower to even just become human. That's not normal. Or some people might experience more of the midday slump, right? They're like, oh, that 2-3 o'clock, I feel just practically narcoleptic. I could fall asleep at my desk. And they're reaching for things like caffeine, or they're reaching for things like sugar to try to just push through that mid-afternoon slump. Or some people really notice the energy inappropriately in the evening. It's more like, I'm like tired, but I'm wired. I can't shut my mind off. I can't fall asleep. I can't stay asleep. I feel like I don't have energy when I should, or I want energy. And I feel like I have too much energy or misappropriated energy when I'm trying to like calm down and chill. So I would say that's a very, very common scenario and very common conversations that I tend to have with patients that come in, because I love that they're starting to recognize that that's not normal and that's not how they should live. It's really just a sign and symptom of bigger things. Now, usually fatigue isn't the only symptom that they come in with, but it's definitely one of the hallmark ones that I want you guys to have a little bit more of an awareness and some conversation around, because I think that that's a big sign and red flag that our body is trying to wave to really kind of get our attention and get us to start making some changes. Not to mention, if we think back on our autoimmunity series, a lot of the stage 1, stage 2 type symptoms we identified. It was like changes in energy, fatigue, insomnia, exhaustion, burnout. It's like, these are some of the first things that really start to show themselves. And if we don't do something about it, it's going to lead to a bigger hormonal imbalance or a bigger problem down the road. We can't just continue to cover it up with caffeine or try to calm ourselves down with alcohol at night, right? So that's where usually, if you were to go more into a traditional medicine realm where you don't really have the time to dig into those types of things, unfortunately, a lot of the conversations tend to go like this, right? So I hear lots of men and women that come in and say, they're like, yeah, I've been to my primary care doctor and they really just offered me some anti-anxiety meds or some sleeping pills, or told me to go get some melatonin. It's like, okay, but like, why? What are we doing just band-aiding the solution until it becomes a bigger issue? Like, the issue's still there. You could take all the melatonin in the world and sedate your sleep, but it's not stopping the progression that's happening under the scenes, right? Or some women will say things like, I went to my OBGYN who ran my hormones and everything came back normal, but I definitely don't feel normal, right? And she really just explained like, oh, this is normal part of being a mom, or this is normal part of, working outside the home, like to expect some level of fatigue, like you just need to sleep better. It's like, yeah, I would love to be able to do that. Like, tell me how, show me how, like, why am I not able to relax and fall asleep? Or I hear conversations where it's like, oh yeah, me and my girlfriends or my friends and I, we joke all the time that, our energy levels, we just run on a continuous IV of caffeine or energy drinks, or we need our wine to kind of like de-stress and calm down at night. So utilizing a lot of these coping techniques is not a healthy way to deal with energy. It's really just kicking the can down the road, right? So when we think about energy, even just to dive in and give a little bit of a high level science lesson, I promise I won't go too deep, but we think about that energy is subject to the laws of physics, right? So if you think back to like middle school, high school days, taking some physics, it's like energy cannot be created or destroyed, right? Laws of thermodynamics. So we can only transfer or transform energy, and our body does the same exact thing. So if we say, for example, energy comes from food, which we'll talk about today. If we ingest energy in the form of carbohydrates, but our body can't necessarily use it as a carbohydrate right now, then our body can transform that carbohydrate into a fat molecule and store it for later, right? So that's a whole classic example of energy being transformed. We can also just transfer energy or even lack of energy. So I always like to use the analogy, like say for example that we're using caffeine or energy drinks to try to kind of like perk up or cope with our energy. Energy can't be created, right? We have a finite amount of it. So if we're using some of those like synthetic ways to like grab energy, we're just stealing that energy from tomorrow, right? So it's like you can't just create new energy. It's like we have to steal it from tomorrow. And so now we go into tomorrow a little bit more depleted. And so then we steal it from the next day, and then we steal it from the next day. So using those types of things, they feel good in the moment, but it's like, what are we doing? We're just stealing energy from tomorrow. We're just creating an IOU and a borrowed scenario. We're on borrowed time and borrowed energy at this point. At what time do we just like pump the brakes and start to say like, stop the crazy train? What are we doing here, right? So whenever we notice noticeable things like symptoms of changes in energy levels, which energy levels can be very tied to mood. So a lot of times even fatigue can manifest as like depression, or it can manifest as anxiety, or it can, like I said, poor sleep patterns. Sometimes energy levels also can affect things like digestion. Whenever energy levels are low, we have to remember that the body is one unit. So if it's pulling energy down, it's pulling everything down. So it's like, whoa, we're pulling the digestion down, we're pulling the metabolic rate down. We're not worried about building things up. We're kind of worried about like energy conservation mode right now. And it even can pull our overall mood down. So I want people to recognize like, hey, this is okay to speak up about these things, because this is really just us being proactive about them becoming bigger issues down the road. So fatigue, exhaustion, low energy, definitely some of the number one symptoms that I see on patient intake forms. So knowing that, why do we not really have a whole lot of resources for dealing with low energy or exhaustion or burnout from a conventional medicine approach? So not saying that, like I said, you guys, if you've been around, you guys know this is not a dog on a conventional or traditional medicine stance. This is just understanding the limitations of different methods of seeking care, right? So in a conventional medicine standpoint, traditional medicine practitioners, they're not taught to use, interpret, they are taught to use, interpret, and treat really based off of lab markers only. So when you think about a classic labs that you go in, it's like, oh, I ran my glucose and they ran my cholesterol and we ran some basic panels like that. It's like, there's nothing on a lab that I can run and be like, energy. I ran your energy lab and your energy lab was low. So here's a pill to fix it. Like that is the model that conventional and traditional medicine operates under. It's like, in order to treat something, I need to have diagnostic proof that it exists on a lab. And that's not how functional medicine works. It's like, no, 80% of someone's diagnosis and treatment is probably in their health history. Yes, do we use labs? 1,000% we use labs to kind of confirm where you're at today. But 9 times out of 10, I'm asking people questions and I can delineate a lot of what I'm thinking just by the conversation of where have they been, what have they tried, what is their health history. It's like, oh yeah, I'm starting to put the pieces of this puzzle together now, right? So it's not just like, I can't run energy on your lab and see and give you an immediate fix for that. So that's why conventional medicine tends to lack in that department as well. Many of these require even more, I guess, specialty testing. Like if you wanted to dig in and look at someone's micronutrient status or gut inflammation or dysbiosis or more complex and complete thyroid labs or saliva analysis, dried urine analysis. Like there's different labs that you would have to measure to really be able to deduce energy function, or you have to be trained in order to be able to look at labs and read between the lines. It's not just like I'm going to see a line item for energy. It's going to be I'm looking at ratios and relationships, and a lot of times I can see someone's patient intake form and they're talking about fatigue and energy levels, and then I start looking at their thyroid labs, I start looking at their electrolyte balance, I start looking at their minerals, I start looking at their vitamins, I start looking at their sex hormone balance, I start looking at their stress and their cortisol levels, and I'm like, yep, I can tell exactly why you're feeling the fatigue, right? But you have to know how to interpret those labs and read between the lines, which isn't necessarily a conventional medicine approach. So you're probably not going to find a really great conversation or a really great strategy with a conventional medicine practitioner around fatigue and energy levels, which is why it takes it becoming a bigger thing for them to be able to really assist or help. Not to mention that, like I said, the conventional medicine model really just isn't set up. They don't have the bandwidth to be able to do that type of deep dive or conversations into your health history. It's like I said, 10, 15-minute appointment tops. So you're not really getting that digging. It's more just like what's happening right here, right now, and how are we going to treat it right here, right now. It's not really an all-encompassing, let's get your health history. Let's really put the bigger pieces of the puzzle together here. And last but not least, I would say that we're not really getting quite a good like energy diagnosis, energy treatment model from conventional medicine, because a lot of the causes, the root causes of what we're looking at here are going to be related to lifestyle and epigenetic factors, right? Environment, emotions, stress levels, nutrition, movement patterns, nervous system regulation. So the treatment for energy levels is really treating and managing and addressing lifestyle changes or environmental factors. And like I said, conventional medicine, they're not trained to do that. They're not trained to coach somebody to change lifestyle and environmental factors. They're more looking at like labs right here, right now. What can I give you to fix it, right? Versus the behavior or the lifestyle changes that functional medicine uses as more of their first line of treatment. So fun fact, I mean, traditional medical school has less than 12 hours of nutrition curriculum in entirety. So we're not really building that model to be able to handle things like energy level and fatigue. We're building a model in a traditional sense that helps people with emergency situations or like acute disease. Not, I'm trying to be proactive and preventative and like thrive, not just survive. That's what traditional medicine is for. Like, absolutely, if my survival is under threat right now, absolutely I'm seeking out more of a traditional or conventional medicine. But if it's more like I'm just not thriving, that's where we really need to dig into something different, right? So don't try to use a model that it's not meant for. That's okay. Just ditch it, leave it, and start to really transition to like, how am I really seeking out health care, not just medical care? And that's where then when I think about this conversation around energy, or someone comes in and they're talking about, I'm fatigued, I'm exhausted, it's contributing to low mood, I can't sleep when I want, I don't have energy to do anything or motivation to do anything that I want to when I am in a state that I should be. What is the problem? What's really dragging me down? And so this is where we'll start to get into some of those questions of what should we really be thinking about when it comes to low energy states. So I always call them energy givers and energy drainers. Both of those are going to be important conversations for us to have. You can't just focus on what gives you energy if you're not plugging the hole in the bucket of what's draining your energy. That's where a lot of people tend to go wrong, even in more of the functional medicine or functional nutrition space, is that they're really good at like giving, just like a conventional model. They're like, here's a pill, here, this'll fix it. Same thing. You can do the same thing with supplements or protocols in a functional nutrition standpoint, where they're like, here's supplements, just take these for your energy levels. But where's the conversation around what's draining your bucket? You're gonna waste your time, energy, effort, money by just throwing things into your bucket, desperately trying to create energy without stopping the hole from the bottom. So you can do both, and you should do both. I'm not saying that we can't have some energy givers, because we absolutely need that, but I also don't want to ignore the fact that we have to plug the damn hole in the bottom of the bucket. What's draining your energy? And these are the types of things that usually require some work, not gonna lie. Physical work, mindset work, emotional body, physical body, spiritual body, energetic body, all things really working together. So that's my jam. That's what I like to help people with, of like actionable items that they can be really changing and engaging in their day-to-day. So let's first talk about energy givers, right? What are the things that really contribute to energy? And we have to be checking these off the list, because if I don't have enough energy givers, then I know that that person is going to struggle with having enough energy, right? So these are some of the things that I tend to roll through. Obviously, these take months working with individuals to really correct, but I'm going to start to throw some things out there so that you guys can start to think for yourself. What are maybe some energy givers that you don't have on board right now? Or what are some energy drainers that we need to really plug the hole? So starting with energy givers, consider that energy givers are definitely going to start with food. Absolutely. Love me some nutrition talk. Recognizing that in this nutrition space, a lot of people always are thinking things like calories, right? Or thinking things like carbs. And we have to recognize that food is a form of energy. Even calorie as a word is a unit of energy given off by said food. So if we're in this headspace where we think like low calorie is better, then we're also saying that low energy is better. Just pause and recognize that that's what you're saying when you're recognizing or trying to follow a low calorie diet. We also have to recognize same thing with carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are a fuel source. Everybody has their own sweet spot when it comes to carbohydrates. I'm not saying go out there and fill your face with carbs if you're having an energy issue, because that will make things worse. But we have to recognize that's why our body craves more carbs when it wants energy, right? Because it's a very quick and fast source of energy. And so again, we get a lot of individuals that have anxiety around food, disordered eating patterns, relationship with food issues, and that's because they really don't know how to get a handle on different ways to give or build their body's energy, and they tend to then go towards sugar or cravings or food to be a sole source of energy for them. So the energy giver of food, we do have to check off the list. I always have to ask and look as a practitioner, is this person chronically dieting? That's going to be a big one. Does this person have some blood sugar imbalances that need to be corrected? That will drain your energy. Are they getting sufficient protein? Are you getting sufficient calories for your energy needs? Are you prioritizing quality food sources that give you enough micronutrients, vitamins, and minerals? Or are we eating enough food? Maybe we're eating plenty of calories, but the calories that we're choosing are kind of void of nutrient density. So our body will definitely recognize that. It is not dumb. It's like, that wasn't food, try again. So that can really drain energy as well too. And then also thinking about, do we have some disordered relationship with food or some food anxieties? All of those things are really going to be something that could either give us energy from food or drain our energy from food if we just don't have some of those basic boxes checked of under fueling, under protein, not getting enough micronutrients, not getting enough whole food sources, having blood sugar imbalances, chronically dieting, things like that. Energy giver number 2 is going to be this fancy word, I'll throw it out there for all of my fellow nerds, is mitochondria, right? So energy literally is given and created from our powerhouses in our cell called the mitochondria. Now, mitochondria really break down to muscle and movement. Lots of mitochondria stimulated through moving, but also having a good amount of muscle mass. So when I'm looking at an individual or working with an individual that's having trouble with fatigue or energy levels or burnout, I'm looking at, is this person relatively sedentary? How can I get this person moving more? Or do I need to get this person moving less? Are they overexerting their body's overall energy allotment? Is this person under muscled? Very common. A lot of people come in like, I want to lose weight, Lauren. I'm like, I get that, but you don't have enough muscle. So it's kind of taking on a different look there as well too. Do they have routines in place to actively preserve or build muscle? Those are going to be energy givers. Food, mitochondria, muscle, and the final one being energy giver of our circadian rhythm. That's a fancy way of saying, are we in alignment with nature? Are we in alignment with the light and dark cycles of the sun? Are we getting sunlight on our skin? Do we have a consistent sleeping pattern? So again, I'm looking at, is this person exposed to a lot of artificial light, blue light throughout the day and or evening hours? Does this person come into contact with nature or sunlight consistently? What is their bedtime routine or their sleep routine? What are their wake habits and rituals? Things like that. So energy givers are going to be very extensive. Energy givers, though, can also be energy drainers if they're not performed correctly. So giving ourselves energy from things like food, building our mitochondria, encouraging a great alignment of circadian rhythm, that will fix energy woes immensely, right? From a root cause perspective, not just covering it up and giving somebody like assistive energy like caffeine or stimulants, which can honestly just make the situation worse because we're just stealing energy from the next day. Now, I could give somebody all of the greatest energy through food and sleep and sunlight and all of these great things, but if I'm not plugging the hole in the bottom of the bucket, they're draining just as fast as I'm giving, so we're not really getting anywhere. We're spinning our wheels. And I would say that everything from an energy draining perspective goes under this umbrella that we know and love called stress. And now this is, yes, you're gonna be your uncontrollable stressors, but also your controllable stressors, or what some people refer to as your unrealized stress. Stress is so draining. It makes us have higher protein needs. It makes us have higher micronutrient needs. Stress breaks down the lining of the gut and causes gut inflammation, which drains our energy. Stress breaks down our muscle tissue, which then takes that energy giver away. It is just one of those things where if we don't have a great conversation around nervous system regulation and having tools that really promote a positive cortisol response, then we're going to be draining energy just as fast as we're giving it. So this is where I start to think really deep and, like I said, a little bit more sciencey. Does this individual have some HPA axis dysregulation? That's your hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. Does this person have some thyroid issues? What is this person's unrealized stress load? What types of practices and techniques are part of their daily offload strategy? Do we need to replenish some micronutrients for this person due to increased stress? Do we need to adjust this person's daily energy output due to stress? So all of these things, you can see how there's kind of this equation of, yes, giving energy, but also we have to stop the bleed of draining energy as well too. So this is where I will say that, like I said, the functional medicine side can be just as helpless, I hate to say useless, but helpless or useless as a conventional medicine approach if we're just trying to do it through supplement protocols or elimination. It's such a bigger conversation than that, and that's where it really takes coming in and looking at the whole person and what their unique, like I said, energy giver opportunities are or energy draining opportunities are. So if you've been someone that, like I said, is out there knowing that you're struggling with things like fatigue, exhaustion, it's pulling on things like mood or affecting things like sleep, digestion, don't sit on it. Make sure that this is something to where it's like, okay, I need to start to proactively think about how I'm managing this, because it's really just that first little red flag warning that my body is trying to wave to kind of get my attention. Not to mention, it can lead to bigger issues down the road too, whether that's more advanced chronic diseases, metabolic dysregulation, type 2 diabetes, autoimmune disease, or even it can even build and contribute to things like weight loss resistance too. So if you guys have been following along with my stories this weekend, you guys know that I'll be hosting a free webinar next Wednesday, June 14th, Wednesday, June 14th at 5 p.m. Central Time. I'll be sure to post the link to that again, but I'm going to be doing a free webinar all around weight loss resistance, how to access your own internal pharmacy to reverse it. And a lot of individuals that struggle with fatigue also struggle with weight loss resistance. So if you feel like you're in that boat, be sure to register, because you can't get the link information unless you register. So be sure to register for my weight loss webinar, weight loss resistance webinar that is, and I'll send you the Zoom information. And those that attend live and participate will have an opportunity for more bonus resources and freebies as well too. So be on the lookout for a link to register for the weight loss resistance webinar. Come back next Monday for more Learn with Flo. If you have any specific symptoms that you would like to see me dive into and really debunk, shoot them my way, and we'll try to get to as many as we can.